So hey man, thanks for doing this. Welcome to the what I would call the Outdoor Podcast, is a show we've been doing. I chose like I was saying, to do it live because I thought it'd be cooler for people if they want to comment and have comments or questions for you specifically in regards to you know the different stuff you're working on the Slingshot channel, because there's so many cool things there. It's sometimes I think it would be hard to describe to people the amount of cool stuff you guys got going on there. But I guess tell us real quick about the channel. I mean, you've had it for a few years now, right?
Actually, I started in 2008. So that was just right after Google had bought YouTube in the first place and
Wow.
threw out all the illegally uploaded TV content, like series and so on. So everybody was so what we're going to upload now? Cat videos? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Everybody uploaded cat videos. Yeah, I started really simple, just with the homemade slingshots and so on, basically to entertain a few people in the forum that I was a member in. So I just had rediscovered slingshots as a hobby after a long break. I used
Yeah.
slingshots as a kid and then came back to it eventually when I was in my 40s. And then I developed the channel from there, and it's quite a journey now, I have to say.
So on your channel, you have created some of the coolest things I mean I've ever seen. And when it comes to crossbows in general and these minier crossbows, the pistol type crossbows, you have really worked on stuff that I would think is amazing. I have actually played with some of the things here in the States. And I just remember thinking, like, this is one of the coolest things to be able to kind of reload a crossbow on the go. And I know you mentioned in a couple videos about the idea of an automatic crossbow. I don't know if you're joking or not, but it looked like you did work
Oh,
on something that would be an automatic. But I was going to ask you about that. You mentioned electric energy to, recock the crossbow. Is there any
mhm.
thought to, you remember the Parker crossbow? They had a gas cylinder
Yeah,
that
yeah. The
recocked it.
Concord, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, is there any, I guess, what would be the difference between like an electric and then like a gas? Would one of those be more effective, you think, or easily or efficient?
No, actually, there have been a few commercial products on the market that use like pressurized air or CO2 or things like this to recock a crossbow. You have two main issues, or three main issues, or four main issues really, why that isn't a good idea. First thing is it makes the entire crossbow fairly bulky, since you're going to need all kinds of vents and pipes and everything. And also you need some kind of a piston, that operates the entire thing. So it is heavy and bulky to do it that way. Second, the amount of air that you can carry in a crossbow is fairly limited. So therefore, you can't really do a lot of shots. So like the systems that I saw been limited to somewhat 5 to 8 shots, and then you needed to recharge it, which for a fully automatic crossbow is just not the way to go.
Yeah,
So you just
it's not like a
definitely want more
paintball gun, huh?
shots. Yes. So, and then also the problem with the air and or the CO2 is also that you need to release the pressure in between shots. This means that yes,
Mhm.
you cock it, but then you need to get rid of the air so
Mhm.
that you can reload again. And the problem is that's fairly slow, and it's also really loud. These things are hissing like dragons, and I don't think it's a good idea to have a loud crossbow. I mean, why not just using a
Mhm.
firearm to begin with, when the thing
Yeah,
is as loud as Smaug the Dragon? so,
yeah.
so therefore, and then also, of course, the entire system is very expensive that way because it needs to be tight. So you need lots of O-rings and development and everything. So I just don't think it's a great idea. And then in effect, if you talk pressurized air, you're again talking electricity to begin with, because you are going to recharge it with the compressor, and
Yeah,
the compressor runs on electric energy. So why not use that electric energy to cock the crossbow directly? So I
yeah.
think it's more
Makes
efficient.
sense. What's your thoughts on the a few years ago? It's been kind of quiet now for a lot of years, but I know you've seen this. But it was the Crossman airbow. What's your thoughts on that device?
Actually, I think they're going to make a comeback. I'm actually working with several companies on a comeback of these things. The biggest disadvantage of these airbows is you have one shot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that is clearly a disadvantage. I mean, it is. If you compare it to most crossbows, I mean, there is a two-shot crossbow, I guess, but typically a crossbow only has one shot, and the same is true for these air bows. and I don't think it's good enough. I just think you need multiple shots, and I'm working with FX air guns. We're now bringing out, it's actually already on the market. You can buy this already. It's an 8-shot Gatling type crossbow. It's called a Redback. So if you type this in, FX air guns Redback, then you're going to see it. It looks awesome, and it is awesome because you have 8 shots at full power, and then we're talking. Right? You actually get this in 2 versions, in a shorter version and in a longer version. And the longer version shoots these Air Venturi arrows that you can, Air Venturi also has one of these air bows. So you can just take a 50 caliber air gun and then reload it with an arrow, and then it's really powerful. But 8
This
shots
thing's
is a
awesome.
difference. This
Oh
is a
my
difference, and I think
gosh.
that will make a difference because what do you do to an air gun when you want to make it deadly? You use arrows instead of pellets, because
Yeah.
as every bow hunter knows, an arrow at a fraction of the energy has the same kind of lethal power and potential that a firearm has. So penetration is better, and everything is just better than in a firearm at the same energy level. So therefore, these are the deadliest air guns I think that have ever been invented. It's kind of
Wow.
a cross between an air gun and a crossbow, I think, but it has the advantages of both designs. So I think these things are the future. And there is another company, AEA, who's also coming out with multi-shot versions, and these ones are even more powerful. They only have 4 shots. I think they're not yet on the market, but I've already filmed them in the US. So, and these things are exceeding 600 feet per second with a really heavy arrow, and you have 4 shots. So we're talking upwards of 500 foot-pounds per arrow. So this will redefine air guns and crossbows as we know them. I think I'm convinced about this.
So this FX Redback, what's the length of this arrow?
Well, they have 2 versions. There's a shorter version where the arrow is probably, I don't know how long will it be. It's probably around 20 inches or something. And then there's also a full-size version, which is kind of bulky because it's really long. And then you have probably 31 inches or 32 inches of an arrow length. So it's basically a full-length arrow, whereas the shorter version is comparable to a crossbow bolt and not to a bow bolt.
Okay.
Bow arrow.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense. Now let's talk real quick about this concept that you've came up with the mini crossbow with a magazine. So I guess, how did you come to this magazine idea, and how did you guys make it so clean? Like, it's so clean. When I see the video, I'm like, wow, that looks awesome. Like, how it just simply slaps right in there cleanly. I guess tell us about that one.
But first of all, thanks for the compliment. I really appreciate it. And it's been a development. So originally, I've been looking at the 4,000 euro Chukonu design that you probably have also heard about, right? The Chinese had one, and it was like rapid shooting. You just had to, there was no aiming, there was no fletching, so it was really, really a kind of a mass fire device. That was really not accurate at all. It was just all optimized on a very, very high shot frequency. But I thought that concept can probably be brought over into modern days and make it just much better so that you can also aim with it and everything. And my first prototypes that I made were really clumsy and actually the opposite of clean, right? They were just chopped together from wood. And then I was thinking about how to market this. Now, my idea was to not patent it and do the opposite, open it up. So I took that invention and gave it into the public domain. So I said, so everybody can use this idea, no matter if it's a commercial or a private project. I'm giving it away for free, and I published it so that there would be prior art, so nobody else could patent it. My idea was that this can only take off if several companies get involved. If there's only one company that makes it, why would they ever enhance it? Why would they ever do a second generation? They could keep selling the first version, and that worked beautifully. We have probably 5 or 6 commercial companies, amongst them big companies like Barnett, that are now working on repeating crossbows, and we're now in 3rd major iteration of those. So we will have third generation repeating pistol crossbows, and all the competitors are trying to be better than the competition from last year. So that's
Yeah.
why we see a lot of progress, and that is the reason why they are getting better and better all the time. So I have, I'm really proud to say that my original idea seems to work beautifully. So,
Yeah,
which
for
makes me
sure.
very happy.
Yeah, it's
So,
just amazing. Um, as far as in like Europe and Germany and as far as that, are there and I don't know the answer to this, that's what I was asking, but is there compound bow manufacturers over there?
um, there might be some very small companies that like hand make them, but they would just have just a handful of customers. Typically, most of the compound bows now made everywhere in the world are either coming from Taiwan or China. The things that even most of the models that in the US are sold under the names of US brands are actually made in Taiwan and made in China. Only the top of the line products I think they still make in the US. So
Yeah,
and that's
I've been
because
able to tour. Yeah, I've been able to
right.
tour a few of the factories, Hoyt and Prime
Mhm,
and Darton and at one point Athens before they went out of business. But yeah, they were all made there for the main bow line. But like I don't know, like you're saying, yeah, the cheaper stuff, I have no idea where they get it from or if they make it. I didn't see any of that. I just
mhm.
saw the CNC stuff that's getting machined. Um, yeah, because that's what I was going to ask. Because I feel like it is. Are people not allowed to compound bow hunt in Europe?
No, well, in many European countries, you cannot hunt with a bow. You and also not with a crossbow. Now, hunting in many countries, in like Germany and France, and most of the developed rich countries, hunting is something for rich people. So you have to have a hunting license to begin with, but that's not easy to make, and it costs a lot of money, and
Mm,
therefore it's like a nobleman's sport, really, right? So many of the top level politicians would also be hunters, but it's just not a leisure time activity. For the
yeah.
average person on the street, that is not something that he would be able to afford. And
Hmm.
therefore, they're still very traditional. So they have their own hunting rifles, often costing a fortune, as much as a
Hmm.
luxury car. Made
So
in cool places, amazing guns, really. But if you would take an AR-15 and go to a hunt, they would actually throw rocks at you, I think. So and and with the both, there's no talk that they may allow it again, basically
mhm.
because we have a huge black boar problem in large parts of Europe. And the black boars are getting so close to the villages and cities that they are afraid to use firearms to hunt them down.
Yeah,
And
I
also
mean,
these
makes
these
sense.
are super clever,
Yeah,
so
you're like,
so
hey, I'm the guy. I got everything here.
So they're
Um,
now talking, about making it legal again. I have to say that these bans that bow and arrow and so on are not suitable for hunting are dating back to the 60s and 70s
yeah, I was gonna
when
say it
we
feels like
didn't
it's
have
old.
the kind of bows and arrows that were
Mhm.
suitable for hunting, really, right? So
Yeah.
therefore, I think this is now changing. We're getting scientific studies. I just talked to a gentleman from Finland who they published a huge study on bow hunting,
Hmm.
going after white deer, and saying basically they have the same success rate as hunting as hunters that use firearms for hunting. So
I would think.
so I
I mean, to be honest, the study alone should just look at the United States and Canada. I mean, we kill so many deer every year with bows. It's literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And obviously, there wouldn't be a market for it if we weren't able to be successful. And to be honest with you, I've actually seen more deer get wounded with guns than I have with bows. To be honest, in different situations, it's weird to say, but just so many times. And I feel like in the States, like, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't bow hunt, to be honest. It's so like it's so much to it. There's like relaxing part of it. There's this chase, of course. There's the trying to figure out where to be. And obviously some people have it easy with cornfields and things like that. But other people, there's so many people bow hunting in the States. It's really crazy. In Michigan alone, where I'm at, we have, hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's
mhm.
people here, I guess people here, and this is actually funny. I just did a video on this because they're trying to raise prices of the tags in Michigan specifically. But people here, like if you do that, like if you go against hunting, you get voted out here. It's different. It's like it's
Which is great.
tradition.
I
Like
applaud this very much.
you don't mess with the hunters, especially in a state that's big on hunting. Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Iowa, Kansas. Utah, like those states. Wisconsin, a big one too. Obviously, Matthews is there, and there's a lot of companies there that are hunting related. And hunting generates billions of dollars here. Um, Same with Canada, right? In Canada, we have tons of black bears. There's tons of hunting in Canada, Saskatchewan. APA's out of Canada, great bow manufacturer out of Canada there. Obviously, Excalibur used to be, I don't know if they still are because they're owned by Bowtech now, so it's a little confusing. But yeah, so if I'm walking in the woods of Germany and I'm out there and I'm walking and I see a deer, what kind of deer would I see? Is it a red stag? Like, what kind of deer do you guys have?
Yeah, we have lots of red deer. That's very typical in Germany. We don't have like whitetail. Then that will be an alien species here. I mean, they have
Okay.
lots of those in Finland, and I think they hunt them and they are allowed to hunt them all year long because they are considered alien.
Hmm.
So, but for example, bow hunters in Finland cannot go after like elk. That's not possible. That would be illegal. But they can do the white deer. So, in any case, you must understand that in Germany there is a major difference. Here, you cannot just go out in the woods and hunt.
Mm.
Each forest actually has an owner, and that owner
Oh.
can rent out the hunting rights. So there's typically
Mm.
one hunter who actually wins comes up with the highest vote, with the highest bid, and then that hunter only is allowed to hunt, but it's also his duty to hunt. So he would have to pay for the entire harvest that, for
Mm.
example, the black boar destroys. Right, he has to pay to
Interesting.
the farmer
Wow.
and fully compensate because it is his responsibility to make sure that that's not happening. So therefore, it is in Germany it is very expensive. So easily, even if you get more far away from a city, for a hunting right, it's easily 5 figures a year that you just have to
Wow.
pay just to be allowed to be in there, plus all the money that you have to pay for insurance, so that how expensive it is if the black boar go into a cornfield. There's nothing left
Yeah.
of it after they're finished. They eat like 2% and the rest is just trampled down. So
Jeez.
so it's like very, very expensive here. And these people typically would not consider going out with a bow. So we do
Hmm.
have a lot of archers here, but it's like target shooting only. So there's
Hmm.
no hunting.
Yeah.
But they of course also use modern type bows, compound bows and recurve bows, and those can be also very elaborate. And therefore we still use the same bows. We're just not shooting at animals with those. So
Yeah. The bows you mentioned earlier, the bows coming out of Taiwan and China, are those uh, like a specific brand names? Because I've only really know one, and I know two of them actually. One's Sanlita, which I might be pronouncing it wrong, and the other one I think is two top or 2 point. Is there other ones
yeah,
that are the
but
main name?
once a year I visit EK Archery, or it's called Polang. Polang is the mother
Mm.
company, and they're trying to establish an own brand called EK Archery, and they are now also in the US. I have to say that this is probably the biggest bow manufacturer in the world, and everybody is
Mm.
buying from them. All of the companies that you just mentioned are buying from them, and those bows are of course branded under their name, and you would not see that the original maker is Polang. And these people are also really, really, really good at bow making. I can tell you,
Mhm.
they are also so cheap that you wonder how it's possible to make a bow for that kind of money, right? If you would make the same thing in Germany, it would cost you easily 10 times as much. Right? So, and they're really good bows, I have to say. I mean, they're getting better and better and better. And there's nothing wrong with those bows. It's just
Yeah.
that they get like a small amount of the margin, and the big profit is made by the U.S. importer. And now, of course,
Yeah.
the entire market is a little bit upset because very soon, with the new tariffs that are slapped on practically everything, these things will be more expensive in the US. Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? So
Correct. Yeah.
people
These
don't
bows
realize
will.
how many of these things are actually imported and not made in the US. Right? So,
I hear you. I know.
right.
Um. So. Sorry. The one I do see your comment. Sorry. I do see your comment. Sorry about that. So it is interesting, yes. And I've actually, for years, I've made comments to the American bow manufacturers about Amazon because Amazon had really changed the game in America as well as other countries, of course. But just because there's low cost options for people to learn archery, but what I tried to explain to them was because American companies get a little bit upset if you cover Chinese companies, like things like that. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. There's a lot of pride that, if you're gonna, like, for me specifically, like, because I'm an outsider, I'm just a media group, but like if I cover something, I might get a phone call and say, hey, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of political a little bit in that sense. But my point is, what I try to explain to them is I said, listen, you're losing new archers on Amazon, right? And it's okay because these archers are people that wouldn't necessarily buy a pro shop bow. They're not necessarily going to walk into a pro shop and buy a bow. But what I'm saying is, you have to have a low cost solution to compete. You can't just allow like the Chinese brands to sell on Amazon. You don't have something to compete versus that. Because a lot of times in America, pro shops are a big deal here, and that's okay. This is the way we do it. But like the pro shop is like the hub, right? Like the people buy the bow from the pro shop. But the problem is people aren't always doing that, right? So people are going online and they're buying an Amazon bow for 200 bucks, 250 American, and it's really cheap. So I think, basically on what we're saying right now is that maybe these companies are starting to do that importing but changing the name to try to compete versus that low cost solution, right? Because there's no other option.
It could be, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing this, So, and by the way, this has always been the case. This is not a recent development. I
Yeah.
mean, so Polang, I think, started in the late '80s, and therefore, and they deal with everyone on the market. So it's and I also think that it's important that affordable bows get into the market, and often these are bows that are ready to shoot. You
Yeah.
don't have to configure them. You don't have to attach a D loop, and you don't have to do nothing to them. They shoot right out of the box. They have everything attached, and yes, they might not be perfectly tuned to everyone, but that's not hard to do, and therefore, and also it's enough to get you started, right? So
Hmm.
and I don't think that the people that really use these intensively would stay with the cheap products for a long time.
Yeah.
But if
That's
I
a good
don't know
point.
if this is a hobby for me, would I go out and spend $1,000 on a bow? I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I haven't done
Great
that, I
point.
have to say. Right. So
What's your thoughts on the crossbow market? Like, are we maxing out on speed? I mean, obviously 10 points been pushing this 515, 505 for a couple years, Raven with the 500. And then we have, the prices too. Obviously, they've gotten up to almost $4,000 depending on what scope you put on these bows. So I guess what's your thoughts on that part of it?
well, first of all, I think we now have two completely different crossbow markets in Europe and in the US. And also in the US, there's also a second market developing, and that's more like for the tactical crossbows that are not used for the hunting purpose. For hunting, I think the market is very specific. These companies try to sell just another model to the same people, and therefore they have to enhance something. so, and speed is the obvious thing that they always pick on, right? Because it was faster than it's faster. I believe that crossbows have already reached a point where it doesn't make much sense to make them even faster, because most of the crossbows, even the cheap models, are so fast already and have so much energy that they will go through literally any animal on the planet straight through, right? So,
Mhm.
so why making it faster and faster and faster? There's a point where it is just overkill.
Yeah.
But I find the technology fascinating, of course. I mean that's for sure. So,
What do
but
you think the perfect speed is for those crossbows for hunting purposes? Like 400, 430, 360?
well, it depends a little bit, of course, on the distance that you're going for, right? I mean, I know a lot of people that would never shoot at an animal that is more far away than, let's maybe say, 30 yards, right? Um, and if you never exceed that distance, I don't think that even if it's just a 300 feet per second crossbow with a heavy enough bolt would be a problem, right? It's still no problem. But of course, if
Yeah.
you want to really do it and shoot from a longer distance, then the more speed you have, the more distance you can go for, basically, if you're a good enough shooter. So,
Hmm.
so that's the thing that you have to say, and it's really not my experience because I actually have never used a crossbow for hunting. I'm
Hmm.
more looking at the other side of the crossbow market, and that is the tactical market. And here we are optimizing it completely in the different direction. We're now
Hmm.
saying, how low of a draw force can you go and still have a deadly shot? So how
Ah.
weak can the crossbow be, because the
Mhm.
weaker it is, the faster it is to repeat, of
Mhm.
course, right? And if you
Mhm.
use an electric motor, this means the higher your shot frequency can be. So we're optimizing bolts, and we're optimizing tips and everything, and bolt weight to achieve lethal hits with as little as 30 pounds in a crossbow, right?
Wow.
and then of course you use all kinds of ballistic gelatin, but also real,
Mhm.
like pork that still has skin and everything, to really see how much do you need to still be deadly, because that's a completely different way to optimize things,
Mhm.
right? um,
Yeah.
and and this is all about having as many shots as you want, because for like self-defense and for other tactical purposes, the shot frequency is very important. Whereas for a hunter, it is absolutely irrelevant how long it takes to reload the thing,
Mhm.
since the deer is gone just after a fraction of a second anyway. So your
Yeah.
crossbow is fast enough to allow a safe reload, right? So
Yeah. I think
therefore,
it's
it's a different market. Really, it is.
I think it's funny because like a couple years back, and you remember this because you know of it, but like a couple years back, Excalibur launched the Twin Strike, which was a 2-bolt system,
I
right?
own
It's
one. Yeah,
two,
interesting
it's
weapon.
two separate. Basically, it's got, for those who don't know, it's got 4 limbs. Basically, it's got 2 and 2. Now it's a double trigger, so it's like a double trigger shotgun. They would say in America here we have those all over double. Um, but the thing is so it came out, and I was shooting it at our hunt camp, and I took it with me, and I was just trying to sight it and make sure it was good to go. Well, the first shot, I hit the dead center, and this is after sighting it in. First shot hits dead center. So then I aim at the center with the second shot, and I switch the second trigger, and I fire, and I Robin Hood the arrow, which was incredible. This is at about 30 yards. And I remember thinking, like, wow, it actually, even though it's lower than the top arrow, it actually compensated and it hit the same spot. Like I thought it would be like a little bit lower, but it didn't. It actually hit because the speed maybe it just still travels the same. And I'm like, wow. But then so that happened, and I was super pumped about it. 'Cause like, this is cool. This is a cool idea to have 2 options when you're out in the field. And it wasn't very heavy, I didn't think, for having two. But my point in the story is, as soon as that thing came out, we had done a podcast with Excalibur talking about it, and literally like maybe 2, 3 weeks later, the state of New Jersey banned that crossbow. The state banned it. And I'm like, why would you do such a thing? And it upsets me in the sense that I just look at things like that and I say, it's too soon. It's too soon to ban it, right? Like, give it a year. See if there's problems or issues, right? It's just like, why? It
Yeah,
was a
okay,
cool
okay. But then
idea.
again, isn't New Jersey very famous for banning like everything?
Yeah, I
So,
agree. I just think it's funny they jump on it like that. It's like, calm down. It's like, change doesn't always have to be scary. Like, just relax. Like, let's see what happens. No, the thing is, I don't know how many they actually sold anyway. Let's be honest. I don't know how many
right.
people actually bought into that. A lot of people called it a gimmick. Like, I thought it was cool. It worked great, and I don't see an issue with it. But, again, to ban something so quickly is like ridiculous in my mind. I feel like
Yeah,
let's
I
just
know.
relax here.
Well, but I also had the feeling when it came out, I had the feeling that Excalibur ran out of ideas how to bring another model out, because they're
Hmm.
just still very much fancying their recurve technology, which I think is a good idea. I mean, it has a
Yeah.
lot of advantages over compound, but it's like there's only so many things that you can enhance on a recurve crossbow. So,
Yeah.
so I thought that they'd gotten a little bit desperate to bring out something new that would excite people, and
Hmm.
that worked. I mean, everybody was talking about this thing way back
Hmm.
then, right?
Good
I
and
just don't
bad.
think that they sold a lot of them. So,
Yeah,
so
so what's your thoughts on Raven? They've been kind of quiet, huh, for a couple years now, I feel like.
yeah. First of all, I love Raven because they're thinking outside of the box, and that's what I also always try to do. There is so few companies that do that. Everybody optimizes the same things, and
Mhm.
Raven is thinking completely different. I love what they do. I love all the different designs they came up with. Even though, of course, they also have to solve a million problems, and you often hear from Raven like, factory recalls and all these things, which is natural. If you go completely new routes, then
Mhm.
yeah, you run into new problems that nobody else has ever solved for you. So, but in general, I completely love what they do. They have the greatest ideas. They have great execution. It's just I think that they are for a major success in the market. They're simply too expensive.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how this is in the US, but there's so few people here in Germany that would pay what they are asking for, let's say the 500 model, right? They just wouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
therefore, I think they should strive to also offer cheaper alternatives. But it's their business and they know what they're doing. So my criticism is probably irrelevant. But I feel that a company would have more success if the price would like be cut to half, to
Yeah.
be honest.
The have you done any work with, because I believe they're owned by Crossman now. I think they sold a few years back to Crossman. And have you done any work with Crossman?
Actually, I tried, and then Crossman got bought from Gammo just last year. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. So
so
Gamma
there's no
owns
more
that now?
Crossman. So my contacts all vanished, and yeah, I tried to work with Crossman on various programs. Just exactly a year ago at EVA, I had a huge meeting with them in Germany in the EVA show, which is like it's like the German, like the European version of the short show, right? So
Yeah.
really, really huge thing. And they've been there, and I met with all the people from the US. And we had good talks, and then I stopped hearing from them. And then a few weeks later, it came through that Gamo has bought them, and they want to completely redesign the strategy of Crossman. So
That's
we'll
crazy. I
see.
didn't know
We'll
that.
see. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder where that'll put Crossman, because they were making a crossbow in there too, that center point. And then they were kind of dipping into the archery stuff. Obviously, buying Raven was a huge move. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of money. I know that. That was a big money move here. And it's huge money. But that's why I asked, because it's interesting to see like what's going to happen there. Well, now who knows now? Obviously now it's going to be everything's thrown to the wind here. But before that, I was thinking, man, I wonder how they're going to align Raven, Centerpoint, and Crossman. They might do something cool, like some of the stuff you've been talking about or working on. That they might start putting together some cool things that would go off archery as well, right? And I'm thinking, man, maybe that could turn into something. But man, that's interesting. It's kind of too bad, to be honest. I kind of like when there's multiple brands.
Well, yeah, but that's how the business works, right? So everybody
Yeah,
gets eaten by the bigger fish. So
I
that's
didn't know Gamma was so big. I didn't even realize it. Holy cow!
well, and there's probably an investor group behind it and
Yeah, I
whatnot.
was
I'm
thinking that.
really not
Yeah.
into that,
As
So,
soon as I said that,
so
I thought that. And I was like, you know what? It's probably owned by somebody else. It's bigger pockets. Usually, they've been doing that a lot lately in the industry, buying up everything. It's crazy, except for the
it's
bow
true, but it also
manufacturers.
gives me an opportunity because the disadvantage of these big corporations is that their decision making is very slow. It's like everybody in these companies has a veto right, right? So,
Yeah,
so they have a hard time really doing something that has the potential to really disrupt the market. So,
here
and that's
without
what I
without
did with the pistol crossbows. I disrupted that market. Now,
yeah.
single shot pistol crossbows are pretty much gone, except the very cheap models, and now everybody brings out repeating models. So. But that decision would have been very hard for a big corporation to start with. So
Looks like Gamma with on their website without Crossman being on this list, they own Daisy, which has obviously been around a long time, BSA, Winchester Air Rifles, and BSA something else like family or something. But so they own definitely some big things, especially with that Daisy. That's a
yeah,
cool.
well, but if you then check the forums, there's now all the Crossman fans are saying these models are no longer available and so on. So
Mm,
it's a well,
gotcha. Yeah, it's
it's
crazy.
hard to really say what's the truth behind this. So,
Yeah,
but it did come through, and they did inform me that they got bought, and everybody was no longer sure if they would have a job in a week, right? So.
yeah, that's how it goes. Have you had a chance to play with the ballista bows?
No, not tested those. No.
Yeah, they're like little. They're similar in like size, but they're not autos by any means. But they do have a pull system.
Oh, that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did have one of those, like the reverse version.
Yes,
Um,
correct. The
and
ballista
it,
bat.
it failed on me, I have to say. I tested it, and that was before they also came up with magazine solutions. So I had the single shot version, and I liked the performance. It really had for a pistol crossbow. It had amazing
Yeah.
arrow speed and so on. I didn't like the slowness of the repeating because that's really like a block
Mhm.
and tackle system. So it's like
Yeah.
starting a lawnmower. You really have to pull this out very far, and then it needs to go back. That was a little bit slow to for my taste. Also, I like
Yeah.
repeating crossbows that you can keep aimed at the target without changing your
Yeah.
hands, so you can just repeat it like that, and you don't have to just fumble around with them. The thing is that it kept breaking on me. So the
Uh,
limbs broke, the strings were not
uh,
stable, the cams were not nicely centered, so always the strings would jump off the cable. So I said, for a repeating crossbow, it's just not solid enough. Repeating crossbows, you shoot them a lot more often than a single shot crossbow. It's just in the nature, because shooting so much quicker. So you probably shoot 10 times more arrows on a typical afternoon than when you just use single loading crossbows. Therefore, you need stability. Therefore, I still think that a recurve bow limb is best for a repeating crossbow, since it's so easy to service it. And I also believe that the cocking system needs to allow you to have both hands on the crossbow. So I'm not saying it's a bad product. I'm just saying that mine didn't perform really well. So it kept on breaking.
Did you ever? That was a little one, right? The little one they have.
That was the one that is they call this the reverse. I think the Ballista is just a brand that they sell in the US. That's why I wasn't really thinking about it in the beginning. In Germany, it's sold as a supersonic, and it's also the maker of all this thing is a company called Jungsing, and they're actually from out of China. So they sell it to people that resell it under their own brand, and that's Ballista in the US and other brands in Europe. So this is how these companies work. They don't have own brands. So if you order a container, they will give it to you and they print on them anything you want.
Right? Whatever you want. I should start my own, the Dave bow.
Right.
They had one. It was called the Mega Bat or something, and I couldn't cock it. It was too high. Like it had to come too high. And I don't know if the one I had was a prototype or an issue. I don't know. It was weird. I just couldn't get it cocked. I mean, we tried everything. It's just too far. Like you have no more power when you get to a certain point, right? You can't pull up here, so I had an issue with that, but
probably made for basketball players.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've never tested that one. I tested the small one, which had good success in Europe, I have to say. I mean,
I saw part of a video
successful there too.
I saw part of a video you worked on. It was something, I'm trying to find it real quick, but it was something about a helmet in a crossbow. Did the bolt go through the helmet?
Actually, I did shoot several things against helmets and all kinds of helmets, of course. Now, the things that I am currently working on is actually very, very, very thin projectiles. So needle projectiles. Because as I said, I'm looking for ways on very low energy air guns and crossbows to achieve great penetration. And the solution to this is diameter of the shaft. The thinner the shaft, the easier it is to penetrate. So, for example, I'm now testing darts that only have 1.2 millimeters of a diameter. So they're needles. They're actually blowgun darts, really, right? But if you look at the surface of a shaft of a blowgun at 1.2 millimeters and the surface of a 9 millimeter bolt or projectile, like, 9 millimeter projectile for a 9 millimeter firearm, you need so much more energy to achieve the same penetration with a thicker diameter you would not believe. So that a 7 foot-pound blowgun bolt has the same penetration than a 400 foot-pound 9 millimeter round shot from a gun. Right?
Wow.
So this makes it like physically, it's such a big difference that I'm now optimizing things. And yes, I was able, with a very weak air gun that only had like about 7 foot-pounds of energy, I was able to penetrate a military-grade Kevlar helmet. Right?
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Have you ever played with
as I said, we're rethinking this entire business. Optimizing it for completely new approaches. So,
have you ever had a chance to play with any, because you have obviously been doing this so long, but any World War II relics, like old guns or stuff from the war?
Actually, my first gun was actually something that I found in the woods, and it was left over from the final fighting in World War II. Right, so
wow.
We had like German artillery fighting the American troops just in the forest where I grew up with, and keep in mind, I was born in '65, so when I did this was like 30 years after the war had ended, so it's not all that long. And what happened is that when they surrendered, all the guns and everything were thrown into ditches and just covered with a little bit of earth, and then it was just left there. So when I was a kid, we just would go out with the shovels and try to find things. And I found a still functional 98K carabine, carbine. It's just a German standard issue
Yeah.
rifle. And I got it to shoot. And I well remember when I did the first shot, someone gave me a round. It's hard to get in Germany where guns are
Yeah.
very heavily regulated. And I shot it, and it went straight through a really grown beech tree, straight through the entire thing.
Wow.
And it toppled me over because I was probably 11 at that time, right? And ever since, I was completely fascinated by anything that shoots, right? So
Yeah. Holy cow.
the power was just amazing. The gun didn't hold for very long because it was rusty and so on, but it was just,
Somehow, I have this thing actually. I just see it. I just realized I have it here in my little studio, but I think I could be wrong, but I got this scope, and I don't know. I could have swore I looked this thing up and it was German, but I could be wrong. I
is there
think
a brand name on it somewhere?
it says K43, and I could have swore
Oh,
I saw a logo on it one time when I was really looking at it. I got this from my uncle, but I don't. This is like something he had in his junk drawer years later, but I can't
there
remember.
was a gun that was issued to German military in 1943 that was called the K-43, and it was actually a semi-automatic rifle, the first one that was ever issued to German troops. But this thing looks a little bit too modern to be World War II era, I think. So
Yeah, I wonder if this is from like the Korean War or something, because he was in a couple other wars as well. I mean, he wasn't in World War II. If it was, from that, it would have been something that was given to him or he bought. But I don't know. I don't know why I thought this was. I could have swore there was a symbol on this. Although um, I did have a from him as well. But I did have a German letter opener with the logo on it from the that time frame. I was
all
like,
right.
whoa. I'm like, where that? It was like it's like a little sword. It's like this big, and it's like
Mhm.
just a letter opener, but it's beautiful. Like it's like I don't know if it's ivory or something. I don't even know. Like it's real
Uh-huh.
nice. Like it's like
And
top
there's a
notch. I'm like,
swastika on
dude,
it. All right.
yes, that's what's on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah.
I can say the word on here, but I think I can. I don't know. I was just being cautious. I
Well, I
don't want
think
to
if it's in
scream.
a if it's in a historical context, you can, so
Yes, so that's what it was. Yeah, I was like, dang. I'm like, this thing must be. So I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. But man, I could have swore this had a logo on it too, but I guess I'm wrong. I don't know.
yeah. If you want to find out, I'm sure there's somewhere a forum in the internet where
Yeah,
all the specialists are, and then if you post it, I think you will get your answer in no time. So
yeah. There's
yeah.
definitely some numbers on here. I'm just gonna Google all these numbers, see what this thing is. But it has the look of I know the look on this scope though. I don't think you can see it in here. Maybe let's see. Wait,
uh,
you can kind of see
Not
it.
really, no.
I'm getting there.
No,
Hold on.
no, I don't think this works through a lens, but it seems like it's still functional.
Yeah, the crosshairs remind me of, and I watch a lot of World War II history. I love the World War II in color series. I watch all of them. I just love. I'm kind of a history war buff. I love the World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, all that stuff. I kind of watch it all. But anyways, this looks to me when you look through it, it looked like the view that they showed the Russians had in their scopes. That's
Okay.
why I was like, I wonder if that's a Russian scope or something
It
during World
actually
War
looks too
II.
shiny for a Russian
Is
scope.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't
Russian
know.
scopes very much are, nobody cares for shiny surfaces.
Oh man. Anyway, yeah. So what's next on your agenda? What you guys got coming up on your show?
Oh, we have these three different things that I work on. I heavily work on knives, of course, right? So
Mhm.
knives are is a very important part of my business now. And I try to come up with knives that nobody else has ever done, completely new concepts. Just because the knife collectors dig that, they just love
Mhm.
new mechanisms and completely new ideas. So that's fairly successful. We are also very big into air guns. Air guns is also, I think, is the future. I think everybody wants air guns, and I'm working on really revolutionary air guns, next generation air guns. The next generation that I'm working on is like imagine an air gun where you have a magazine that contains the air and the projectiles. And it's
Mhm.
also a silenced air gun. So it is completely silenced. You don't need a silencer. The barrel is already completely silenced. And you have enough air in the magazine for the exact amount of rounds that is in there. So you don't need to
Mm.
pump it up. You just put it in there, just like a firearm, and you shoot it like a firearm. It can go full auto because there's no full auto ban on air guns. and it's
Wow.
silenced, so it's actually city limit compatible, right? So you can shoot it in your backyard, and it
That's
operates
cool.
just like a firearm. I think this is next level air guns, and I think it will bring air guns to a whole new level when you compare it to firearms. All of a sudden, you have none of the disadvantages of air guns,
Hmm.
but you have a lot of advantages over firearms, such as integrated silencing, such as full auto. Right? So
Yeah,
I think
that's
that one will
cool.
definitely be a hit, but it's mechanically not easy. So I'm working with several manufacturers on the concept, but this is, I think, the direction that I want to take the airgun industry. And on the
Yeah.
crossbows, I definitely think that it's time for an electrically powered tactical crossbow that also has full auto functionality. And I think it will be powered just like with an exchangeable battery, like a Makita, from a Makita power drill. So you can just
Hmm.
exchange it. And then you can go semi or full auto with that thing. So I think that is next level crossbow technology.
Where
So
was this
New Jersey will probably gonna ban it very soon, but
Yeah, it'll be banned instantly. I'm
now
sure
that
it'll
we're
be banned
talking about
instantly.
it, they will probably ban it now, even though it doesn't exist. But
Oh yeah, just talking about it. Where's FX air guns out of?
Sweden, there's actually a
Oh,
Swedish
Sweden. Okay,
manufacturer. Mhm.
very
And
cool.
actually, they take pride in making everything in Sweden. So I visited the factory a number of times. There's no part from China. They don't want that. Every single part
Yeah,
is completely CNC machined, everything. Literally, you get raw aluminum, round rods going into the factory and beautiful air guns coming out of the factory.
yeah. These are
So
sweet looking. I was just looking at their list of air guns. Are
those are the
beautiful.
finest air guns that you can possibly imagine. The only issue that I still have with them is they haven't really started to do semi-auto yet. So all of their air
Hmm.
guns are very smoothly repeating, but they're repeating guns only. They haven't really started to make semi-auto, but semi-auto is now the new rage in the airgun industry. Very
Are these like
so.
dealer only guns? Because I don't see any pricing on these. Is it dealers or?
Actually, they don't sell directly to end users. They
Oh,
used to have an office that really also sold directly to end users here. But I think the manager that they hired had some kind of a stolen stuff and so on.
mm,
So they closed
yeah,
this, and now they sell over Utah Airguns. I think Utah Airguns is their new distributor.
yeah.
But
That's
Utah
cool.
Airguns is great guys. I visited them too, so they're great guys. So if you want an FX airgun, then I can really recommend buying from these guys.
Yeah, who's this? I saw this on your through your linking. It was called. Is it called Go Guns or something?
Kogan is actually my company. I
Oh, it's your
started that
company.
company.
Okay.
Yes, it's my company. And actually, we do have a Gogan in the US and one in the UK too. But those are just franchises. So therefore, I don't really believe in investing money in other countries, since you normally, get, you know, some people will take advantage from you. Let me put it that way.
Yep.
So therefore, I work with people that invest their own money, but I allow them to use my Gogan brand, and of course, I also advertise the stuff for them. Since naturally, when I show an airgun that is meant for the German market very soon, Americans want it too, and
Yeah.
it's a nightmare to ship stuff from Germany to the US. It's a nightmare.
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
if you don't have a distribution company, nobody's happy. So that's why I work with guys in the US and in the UK, and those are great guys. I just visited them in California, and they are actually in California and in Florida. And those are great people. And they sell the crossbows that I design. They also sell the air guns, the ones that I promote
Hmm.
and design together with the respective makers. So yeah, it's like up until 2017, I was basically a YouTuber doing crazy things. But then YouTube changed the rules, and then you could
Yeah.
no longer make money on anything gun related on YouTube. Everything gets
Yeah.
demonetized, and so it's horrible. And therefore, I decided that for me, I either have to go back into my old job. I used to be an executive manager in consumer electronics.
Hmm.
With the 60-hour week and with all the stress that comes with it. I didn't want
Yep.
to do this, or I had to go commercial and start selling things. And I
Yeah.
decided to do that. But I'm no longer I'm not involved in daily operations. So I still live in the woods. I still do what I want. I don't even have access to our shop system. I have people that do this for me, and actually it's 4 hours away from me, which is great. So I found great people that do that for me. But of course, financially, it's just much more lucrative than being a
Yeah.
YouTuber, to say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I I agree. This is cool. You got a lot of stuff on this website, though. I'm impressed. There's a ton. Now, the adder itself, the adder bow, is that something you design and someone else builds it, or how's that work?
Actually, EK Archery came up with the R9 crossbows, which was single shot but lever cocked. I'm not sure if you remember. It wasn't expensive. It was more comparable to the ballista one, but it had like an under lever cocking system. And I got one of these crossbows, and I said, "This thing needs a magazine. It just needs a magazine.
Mhm.
It actually cries for,
Yeah.
give me a magazine." So I built a magazine from wood, and it worked beautifully, and it went viral on the internet. And then EK Archery approached me and said, "We want to develop this together with you." And
Oh, nice.
therefore, we have a collaboration. Therefore, in every one of the other crossbows, there's my signature on it.
Yeah,
So yes,
that's
but
cool.
honestly, what I did is I attached a magazine. I did not invent the crossbow itself.
Yeah, I see what you're saying though about EK's crossbows. They have a ton of crossbows that look very familiar.
Yeah, yeah, and also
Yeah.
they also have bows that they may not sell in the US, but they also have great bows, compound
Yeah.
bows, recurve bows, and so on. And I can assure you, those bows for the money, they're just amazing.
Funny story
So
with that. One time I was looking at a bow. I think it was from Obsession, and I know it, I basically I found the bow again. So I found the bow like it's like one of their main bows. This is years ago though. It's like 2014. But I saw the bow and then I was googling something and somehow I ran into the same exact bow in China and it was being sold in China, the same bow. Look, it looked identical. I literally took them, like this, screenshots, and I emailed the company in China that because I knew who they were, and I emailed. I said, "What's going on with this? Like, how can you have the same bow?" And they said they bought the design from the American guy who designed it, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, "What?" So basically, what was being said is and I did confirm this, but like they're basically like in America they were selling the bow as whatever. But then in China, they were selling the bow to the world as a different name. And it wasn't actually ever seen in America because no one would have seen it because no one was I just somehow randomly ran into this thing randomly. So that was kind of weird. And I was like, dude, this is then it dawned on me. I'm like, it doesn't matter though which side you're on. If you're in China making a bow and trying to sell to Americans to sell, or you're in America designing a bow that maybe someone in China can rebuild and sell, you're trying to make a lot of money. I mean, it really comes down to money. It doesn't matter which way it flies. They don't care. They're just going to try to make money. It's a business. I mean,
yeah, well, and then you also must understand how cheap these things are. So if you have a bow that is here sold for, let's say, $700, it probably costs $85 if you buy it from China, plus
yeah,
maybe $15 for transportation and so on, right?
mhm,
So
it's
it's
crazy.
just not possible to make a bow that has that kind of quality for anywhere near that money in the Western world. It's just not possible. You'll
Yeah,
probably not even able to buy the material that you need for making it. So,
we'll
so
see what
you have
happens.
no
Like you
choice. If
said,
you want to offer both for that price, you got to go to Asia. There's just no alternative. So.
yeah. I think what'll happen is, like you were saying earlier about the tariffs and stuff, it seems like a lot of things might go internal to each country. And it seems like obviously prices are going to be affected dramatically, but we'll see. Because like, you're still going to have an import. I mean, you're going to pay for it more money, but it is what it is, because they can't get rid of it completely because there's no way to, pay for um like you just said, I mean, if they try to do it all internally, it's gonna be like my point is this: like a premium bow, what we would consider a premium bow in the states, might go from 1,500 to 2,000, right? Because now they have to buy the material in the United States. Whereas the China bows that are being imported and sold under an American brand will go up in price, but they'll just double what they were. So if they're $400, now they're 800. It's still cheaper though than spending 2,000 on, you know. So I guess it just depends on how people decide they want to handle the situation, but I don't know.
But I'm also not sure if you guys are aware of the excise tax that you have to pay when you sell bows and arrows and crossbows into the US. Not sure about. Are you familiar with this excise tax?
I feel like I've heard it, but I'm not 100% sure on it.
So there's this super old law in the US that says because of the damage that hunting is doing, archery, and hunting is doing to wildlife, everyone who sells archery equipment must pay an excise tax. And that excise tax is like 15% of the recommended retail price,
Wow.
15%. And it's actually as much as 60 cents for each arrow. Now, if you keep in mind
Jeez.
how much arrows came down, and that is even true for like a pistol crossbow arrow, right? Where
Mhm.
typically a pack of those cost maybe $6, right? No, it's 10 of them,
Wow.
but add 60 cents of them. So, and they don't tell you about this when you start selling stuff. They come back to you maybe 3, 4 years later, and it's like an IRS branch, and they just come to you, and then they say, "How much have you sold?" And they say, "Okay, now it's time to pay us a $500,000, right?" Something like that. And
Crazy.
therefore, I think you have to realize that already archery is heavily taxed in the US, and if they don't
Yeah.
really seriously want to slap another 20% tariffs on them, very soon, most of the money that you pay for a bow goes to the government, and I'm not so sure
Yeah.
if that is right. You know,
Yeah.
so,
That's scary. It's like cigarettes for smokers. They pay 40-50% taxes. It's crazy. It's
yeah, well,
insanity.
but then also I have to say that with these tariffs, I mean, I've been importing and exporting bows and crossbows between Germany and the US for a long time. And I always said it's not fair that if I buy something from America, an American-made product, I pay 5% tariffs. But if I
Hmm.
sell the bow to the US, there's no tariffs on them. I said, that's not fair. I mean, if
Hmm.
we charge tariffs from the US, then it should be the same on the other direction. But if now we have to pay 20%, that's too much. I mean, shouldn't it be
Yeah.
even? I mean,
Well, that's what's happening now. You're getting to this point where he's going to go the other direction. But I think it's one of those things where, if I'm being honest, I think the bigger issue was, I don't know why this happened. Obviously, there was things that happened after the wars and stuff that had to help countries rebuild and things like that. I get it. So I think what happened is some of these things were put in place a long time ago to help rebuild different countries, different issues, and or even help companies keep moving. Like Canada. I mean, Canada is very small when it comes to overall population compared to like the United States. Military power very small compared to the United States. But like, what why? So all these tariffs they're charging us, they're very large. Like, so milk is 290%, or I mean, on our milk, and their milk is zero, right? So like, there's these weird tariffs all over the world that nobody knew about, and that was what I was getting to. Nobody ever knew in the Americans never really knew there's these tariffs. If you didn't follow that stuff, you had no idea that we were being tariffed by other countries, and all of a sudden now it's being exposed. Like, wait, we're actually being tariffed. You guys know that, right? No, and it's this amount. So I think they're trying to figure out a way to really just remove the tariffs, and I don't know if that'll be the case. I can't speak for the government,
yeah,
but I think the goal here isn't necessarily to charge more. It's to really get everybody to cancel their tariffs on the United States, and therefore it could be then actual free trade. But I
well,
don't
that
know if
would be
that's
fair.
going to
Yeah,
be, you know, the ultimate goal or not. But again, I don't think it was done with malice. I think it was done because years ago, if you're a history person like I am, I think we needed to pay extra money. We needed to help, and that was the only way we could afford to help was to do it that way. Otherwise, all the countries would have never
yeah.
been able to rebuild.
But
It'd been
typically,
bad.
that's not how it works. Typically, countries scratch tariffs when there's an inflation problem in the country. So when everybody complains that things are too expensive, and then you say, okay, these things we import from other countries, so let's drop the tariffs, and then everything will be cheaper. And it works,
Hmm.
and then everything will be cheaper.
Yeah,
But it also works in the other direction. So if you keep imposing these very high tariffs, this will definitely boost inflation in the US. It will
yeah,
definitely happen, specifically for goods that you cannot generate on the snap. That really takes time to build factories and everything, right? So just on the short run,
yeah.
you cannot
So
replace
true.
it, and therefore people will just have to either not buy these things at all anymore or just pay a much higher
Hmm.
price. So this is
Yeah,
definitely driving inflation. And I just visited the US, just came back just a few weeks ago, and I was actually shocked about how expensive things have gotten, right, since I
hmm,
last visited.
very high here.
Specifically, like
Everything.
food in the supermarket is, my gosh, it's like, whew.
Yeah,
so,
it's bad.
so
Yeah, you can't get anything anymore for cheap. I mean, we used to. I wouldn't even call it ever. It was never cheap necessarily, but it's definitely gotten way worse than in the last 4 years that we've ever seen. And the problem isn't just that; it's that people like if you have a normal job, you get a raise. Your raise is let's say 3%, a normal number. But then like your healthcare goes up and your car, the gas is more money and this. So it's never keeping up with it. You're literally falling like this. So if you're a person who made $100,000 a year in America years ago, you were like a millionaire. You're like looked at as like you've made life, you're done. Now it's like you gotta make 300 grand to survive. It's insane. Just completely
Yeah, well,
different.
and the housing market and everything is getting so expensive. It's like, yeah. So
Yeah.
so so I'm not sure. I mean, but again, I'm not a politician, and I have no intention
Yeah,
to
me
ever
either.
go into politics.
World
So
world politics issues. We'll see what happens. But all right, man. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you doing this, and it was really fun to talk to you. Like I said, I had so many questions on all these products you've touched over the years, and obviously we just scratched the surface, but it's still a really good conversation. I really appreciate it.
yeah, my pleasure. It was fun.
All right,
Okay,
we'll see you next time. Thank you.
bye bye.
Bye bye.